Okay, in this video, what I wanted to do is to cover how to make a simple picture frame to be able to hang a painting on the wall. And so let's start out with, I'm going to make it in the front viewport. Now, I start off by creating a plane. Now, need to go ahead and look at what the artwork's going to look like that we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and pull that in. So we'll go into our material editor. Now, I always use the slate editor. I don't use that god-awful ancient compact editor from the 1990s. And so we're just going to go in here and right-click. We're going to bring in a map, standard bitmap. And so we'll go into our folder here. And I went ahead and set up a frames folder. And scene assets, images is where your images will go. And let's go ahead and use, let's say, I think I'm going to use this Aaron Horkey piece, okay? And so we can view it. So here's the piece that I'm going to be using. Okay, you can see it's kind of a square piece, and so we don't have to make this exactly correct because I'll be able to size it afterwards, but we just, want to have some kind of idea what it is. And then I don't need any of these segments. A lot of people leave these in here. We don't need it. It's just extra geometry, and it just makes it a pain, so I don't really need that. So it's going to go ahead and convert to editable polygon. Now, like I said, I don't need to measure this or anything. I see people do that all the time. They go in and measure these and it's like that's all a pain. You don't want to do that. It's much easier to not do it. Okay, I'm going to go to move, and then I'm going to right click on all of my little tumblers down here. So this is in the center of our world. Okay, so we want to go ahead and turn on shaded view, and we don't need the grid, so turn that off. That's G on the keyboard. Also, you got that bounding box. We don't need that. That's J on the keyboard. And so then we'll just go ahead and create us a shader on here. So it's going to bring in Arch and Design, and we'll just call this painting. I always want to name everything. And just go ahead and, if I can spell, okay, and apply that to our object. And then by default, the Arch and Design material is real reflective. It's almost like you're creating a piece of porcelain. So we'll really want to turn that reflection down. Now, everything has some reflection in it, so I'm a little bit of reflection. And I'm going to turn the glossiness down a little bit too. And I'm going to turn up my glossy samples. That's just the quality of the highlight that would be on it. We're not going to get a lot of highlight in here. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Okay, so then we'll plug that into our diffuse slot, okay? And this is the image. Okay, now you won't be able to see it on there because we've got to click this little button right here that tells it to show in our viewport, and then we can see our image in our viewport. Now, the other thing I'm going to do in here is, by default, when you put a bitmap in, it comes in and makes it tileable. And I only want one of these. I'm not using a tileable texture, so I'm going to turn that tiling off, which will help me a little bit. Okay, so next thing we need to do is to make sure we get our mapping coordinates correct on here, because right now the mapping coordinates are not correct, okay? So we need to put a mapping coordinate on here. Now, this is one of the things that confuses people a little bit because they put the image like, oh, okay, it's on there and it's great. No, it's distorted, okay, because I didn't match this up. So what you want to do is to put a new mapping coordinate, a UVW mapping coordinate. And we always want to do view align, though it is already going to be aligned to my view, but sometimes it might be flipped a different direction. And we're going to click this button. It says bitmap fit, and that'll allow me to go in there and pick the bitmap, and then you'll see it'll automatically size the mapping coordinate to the correct size. So you can see that this image was stretched a little bit. See how I've got some extra geometry out there? Now to fix that, all I have to do is go back down here to edit poly. Now you'll see that when I go down, I'm losing that coordinate, okay? All you have to do is go down, and this button right here, which is show end result, click that on, and then you're looking at the top of the stack even though I'm down here. Okay, so now I can just take these vertices and I can slide those in, take these over here and slide those in. And then that is the correct shape and proportion so that I'm not distorting the image. I see people all the time distorting their artwork. They're going to put these paintings, and there's this famous artist painting, and they're totally distorted because they're just making a plane and slapping it on there and just letting it distort it. Don't want to distort your artwork. You want your frame to match the artwork. And so now this perfectly matches. Now at this point, I can just bake this in. Okay, so I can just go ahead and convert this to an edit poly, and that's permanently embedded in there. So now I have the actual painting, what I need, and now I'm going to build a frame for it. Okay, lots of ways to do this, but I'm just going to show you the way I do it. So I'm going to come in here and pick border, which is going to pick that border image frame around it. Okay. You got vertices, you got edges, you got borders. Pick that border. And then I'm going to click this button right down here, Create Shape from Selection. Okay, now smooth, linear. Smooth means it'll subdivide it, which you probably wouldn't do anything in this. Linear means it's going to give you exactly what it is. Most of the time, I want it to be exactly what it is. And this is what is going to be the basis for my actual frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and name that frame. So now I've got two things in my viewport, okay? I've got the original plane, which we need to name. That's our painting. And then we've got the frame. Okay, so now what I'm going to do on the frame is I'm going to come in here. Okay, so I'm going to pick the frame, and now what I'm going to do is come up here to spline, and I'm going to pick spline, and then we've got a section in here which allows you to do an outline. Now I can come in here and I can tell it exactly how much I can do an outline, or I can just click on it and I can drag, and I can just decide how far I want it to come out. Okay, so I'm going to do something about like this. Okay, that's about the size of the frame I want on it. Okay, so I turn that off. Now I'm just going to pull in three-dimensional a little bit here. And now I can come in here and just go ahead and put a extrude on this. And then I can tell it, you know, how far I want to extrude it out. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and make a frame material put on this. So let's call this frame, so it's easy to see it. And there's our simple frame in here. Okay, now I would tell you normally you want to put some kind of a manufactured edge on here, like a chamfer or a fillet. Okay, and so let's just go ahead and do that. So we can just come in here and I can do non-destructive editing. So I'll just put an edit poly on top of this. And then what I'm going to do is pick that front edge. And then I'm going to hold down the control key and I'm going to click on edge. And then it's going to switch from polygon to edge when I do that. And it'll select all my edges. Now, a lot of times it'll select another edge going across here. Now, this confuses people all the time. And I have students, you know, when I'm helping my students, they all the time, like, oh my gosh, you know, it's all messed up. So no, you know, what's going on here is it's just showing you the actual triangles that are in your piece, okay? And so there are all kinds of triangles in this, so you don't have to worry about that. Just hold down your Alt key, and we want to deselect that so we don't have it in there, and all we have is the sides in here. So now I can come in here and I can put a chamfer in here, and a lot of times these chamfers may initially be set really, you know, high or something. Just right-click on these little tumblers and take this down, and then get in a little bit closer, and then go ahead and just add a little bit of a chamfer onto that. So we have a little bit of a manufactured edge, which is nice all the way around this. Okay. Okay, this piece of geometry was giving me a little bit of a twist in it. Can you see that this is not the same thickness? It's doing a little kind of a weird twist on it. So we're going to not set that in, and we'll do it a different way. Let's go in here and let's pick these inside polygons. So I'm going to pick this one. I'm holding down the Shift key, and then I'm picking this, which will pick that ring all the way around. And then I'm going to add this one out here. I'm holding down the control key to add to the selection, and then I need to go all the way around with that too. So I'm holding the shift key again, and then that'll loop that all the way around. So now I have the polygons on the outside picked. Okay. So we'll get in a little bit closer on here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is do a bevel. Okay. So we're adding a bevel in here. And so we're going to start, need to kind of look in. And this is the amount of bevel that we're putting in here, what the distance is, okay? So we're going to go with something about like that. Let's just go ahead and type in, we'll just go for 6. And then on our height, okay, it would be the same, okay? Now, we need to make sure there's different settings in here. If I go by polygon, it's going to break them apart like so. And if I go local normals, then it should push those out and keep them as one. Okay, you have different settings in here by groups, okay, and that's going to be pushing them the wrong way. So local normals is our best bet, and usually we might go out just a little bit more, maybe something like that. Okay, and then we'll set that in. Okay, so now we've got a little manufactured edge all the way around that. And let's put our material on it, okay? Now, let's say we want to do some kind of a wood material. Now, there's all kinds of pre-made materials down in Mental Ray, okay, that you can actually use. This material library down here, and let's go into the wood down here. Now these are all legacy shaders, so in other words, these are old shaders, and you can actually still use these. I have a tendency to not use them very much. For the most time, I don't use them. So let's go in and we'll pick something like this walnut and bring it in here, okay? Now, reason I brought this in here were to get these two nodes, okay? I don't really need the actual shader. I'm going to use this shader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on these and bring up its attributes. Now, the thing about it is this is a special node that allows you to adjust the size of the bitmap, and I don't really need that. So I'm just going to drag the bitmap out here, and I'm going to do the same on this one, which is the bump map for it. And so at that point, I don't really need this shader. I just want these maps off of it. Okay, so I'm going to put this in my bump slot, and I'm going to put this in my diffuse slot. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and double click on this and turn it on so we can see it in our viewport. Now, the reason we're not seeing anything right now is because this was created from a spline, so it doesn't have any mapping coordinates. So we're going to need to put a mapping coordinate on it. Now, one of the things we want to pay attention to is this bitmap. We can sit here and look at it, and you can see it, and it's square. Okay, a lot of these, they're tileable textures, they're square, and so what I want to do is to come in here and put a UVW map on this. Okay, by default, it's going to stretch it because it's going to automatically fit it to the frame, which is not square, so it's stretching, and I see people do this all the time. And it's a planar map, which is going to cause stretching along the edges. So what I really want this is a box map, okay? And then it really doesn't matter what the initial size is, but I need all of these to be measured the same. I need it to be a perfect cube. So I'm just going to double click in here and type 1 foot by 1 foot and by a foot. And so now my mapping coordinate is square. So I won't get any stretching. And now all I have to do is scale the gizmo. So I can go in here and scale it. And as I scale it, then I'm adjusting the size of the grain that's on the frame. And you're not going to get any stretching because it's square. Okay. So I can just determine how much I want it on there. And then there you go. Okay. So there's our final piece. And we can render it. And let's just go up here, get our render set up. I'm using Mental Ray, obviously. Get rid of this god-awful 640 by 480 1980s size. Go to an HD TV. We'll do a 1280. Shift F turns on my save frame. And we'll just zoom in on this a little bit. And then we can render it. And you'll see that we've got the wood grain on there. We've got our image on there. And it's all non-distorted. And so that's a perfect little piece. Now it's ready to go onto the wall. And that's a very nice way to make a simple frame, getting your painting and making it ready to go and getting mapping coordinates on it, and everything's ready to go to put on your wall. Okay. The last thing I would do is I would come in here and just group these together. So pick both of these. And then just group this, and we'll just call this whole painting. And then it's ready to go. Okay, thank you very much.